we fulfilling that dream, that vision. I hope to be able to share with you that little by little, I think we're working towards many of those big, broad goals and vision that was laid out when the IBRI was first conceptualized back in 2012, 2013. Now, for me personally, I knew a lot about the IBRI not only because we talked quite a bit about it internally when I was there in the early days, and certainly we talked to some of the founders and some of the plans and research plans. And I think what I can say is, while there's been an evolution in the IBRI, I think much of those same goals and ambitions and vision are as much and really as true today as they were back at the beginning. So what I'd like to do is maybe just fast forward a little bit from where we are today and talk about some of the activities we're involved in, trying to be relevant with science, with the needs of the community, with the opportunity we see for growth and for real impact in building a broader life science community here in central Indiana and beyond. Let's see. There we go. So just to reiterate what Lori said briefly, the IBRI was officially founded in 2013, and this was really, again, a vision and an idea that John Leitleiter brought forward with state leaders and civic leaders and other corporate leaders, as well as the academic community, to establish this independent applied research institute that really is meant to bridge and find its place between industry and academia and create a different type of environment for creating new enterprises, new initiatives, new outcomes that really advance human health and build the community here. And you can see the number of groups that were involved in the early formation. That was the key to launching the IBRI and putting the funding in place to move forward. You'll see, clearly the state has a big vested interest, as well as the Lilly Endowment. Lilly Endowment is a very key element for being part of the broader vision for 16 Tech, but also for the future of Indiana. So, what is our mission here? We wish to become a premier research institute, and again, focusing on improving human health, which is central to many of our collective work. And as part of that, building a world-class organization of researchers, of business professionals, and really serve as a catalyst for scientific innovation and really growing the life sciences community more broadly. And if you've come through the Indianapolis airport recently, you may have seen some of our signage advertisement where we're talking about, and we all believe that science is really the foundation of creating hope, solutions, outcomes for patients that benefit their lives of not only patients but families. And we really see ourselves as being this interface, and if it showed up well on that slide or not, between industry and academia, not only optimizing what's in our community around us here in Indiana, but really eventually reaching beyond our state borders and really becoming more of a national and international presence to advance our goals. So what is the IBR strategy? So there's really, as we kind of fast forward from sort of the original vision, the original idea that put the IBRI in motion, in the past couple of years, we begin to refine more and more what we want to be about, and then how that becomes operationalized. And so the area that we're focusing in is in translational science. So what does that mean? It's improving our molecular understanding of disease and disease processes so that we can come up with new solutions and return them to patients. So new solutions could be in the form of new clinical paradigms of how we use existing drugs. It could be new diagnostics. It could be new therapeutics that eventually find their way through some mechanism, some type of our research and business process that brings new opportunities forward. And we're going to achieve this through global collaboration. We recognize that it's impossible to do any of this work by ourselves, and it's true for any company, but biotech, pharma. Collaboration is really the key to take on some of the tougher we're all working on. And we really see this as being one of our key differentiators. We really want to be a catalyst to actually create approaches and initiatives that otherwise would not occur in disease areas that have unmet needs and where there are truly opportunity to be a provider of innovation. And for our internal strategy and how we grow, we have to look at diversified funding. So IBRI was founded with an endowment, but we have to eventually build beyond that endowment in order to be able to be self-sustainable and grow and really advance our goals. And this comes in many forms. We're very actively putting together a very robust pipeline, much thanks to a lot of the collaborative work. We talk a little bit more about that later. Sponsored research, where we can work with actually help execute key aspects of a research strategy that otherwise would be very difficult to do, but we can do here with our talent and our capabilities. Eventually, we want to be able to create our own IP and technology that could be part of license or transfer, but also be the substrate or the foundation of new company formation, which is really a key outcome that we hope to be able to achieve in the future. And finally, for the work that we do in the disease areas we're interested in, we recognize that there's tremendous opportunity for philanthropic contributions, and we have a very active advancement program trying to build that dimension of our funding. All of this is leading to, what are the key outcomes that the founders, the stakeholders that form the IBRI really want to see happen. And really, we look at it as three key points. One is, science and patient impact. That's what we're all really striving to do, is to make a difference in patient lives and the lives of their families. And so that's what we hope ultimately our work leads to in some measurable form. We also want to be financially sustainable so that we can actually grow and evolve our programs and really attract talent, develop talent, help spin up companies and so forth. So being able to have a strong financial underpinning is crucial. And then finally, we really want to be ultimately viewed as a great partner in building a community. We have a great starting point if you think about it already for Indiana with all the great companies like Lilly Roche, for example. We have IU School of Medicine. We have cities around us, but there's potential to do even more. And so we, with hopefully with our involvement down the road, we can actually be a key factor in making this truly a real destination for biomedical innovation. So ultimately, when all this comes together, these goals aren't and outcomes aren't independent. But if we do it right and we really make it all come together synergistically, we have an opportunity really to have, as I said, a huge impact on really putting Indiana on the map even more than it is today, but also extending a key connection point with the coast where a lot of attention goes now, but ultimately in an international sense as well, where you think about solutions to problems that are going to come from global scientific diversity, not just within moving forward. So let me tell you a little bit about a little bit what's under the engine, if you will, for IBRI under the hood. We decided to put at the center of our strategy a number of key areas of scientific focus. And so when we talk about translational science, we talk about our collaboration, we talk about diversified funding, we really have to have all the components that really make us a very strong scientific engine for the earth, water, air, and fire of translational research. So we have an emphasis on pathways, so understanding disease biology to help define new hypotheses for therapeutic intervention. We're focusing on molecular innovation or drug discovery. So we're really going to harness the power of chemistry to understand disease, but also be the substrate for new drug discovery, therapeutic discovery. Integrated data sciences. So, as we look to the future, the amount of data that's coming from many different sources, whether it's clinical trials, patient samples, genetics, genomics, being able to master that data and be able to learn from it to develop new hypotheses, gain insights about patients, disease heterogeneity, for example, is really going to be crucial to developing the next generation of diagnostics and therapeutics. So we want to be at the forefront of that with what we are able to do here at the IBRI. And then finally, enabling technology, which is really a broad bucket of capabilities that are really necessary to do cutting edge research. And I'll give a couple examples in a moment. The enabling technologies are really going to be at the key of not only what we do within the walls of the IBRI, but what we can actually do in collaboration with our partners to really drive science forward. And so some of these things we'll own within our walls, but others will access through unique arrangements with technology providers and partners around the globe. So just a little bit of an example of that. So if I give you a snapshot today of our capabilities here at the IBRI, again, and this will evolve over time. We have the state-of-the-art biology and chemistry laboratory. We're sitting in a building with about 68,000 square feet of research and an office space. Not only do we have 2 floors of phenomenal space to do biological research, but we've just completed behind these walls here a medicinal chemistry laboratory that allows us to do integrated drug discovery. So that's putting that together creates a real powerful combination for translating hypotheses to products, if you will. With that, we're building a strong capability and expertise in drug discovery. And that's really represented by the talent that we're attracting to the IBRI and developing. We have potential to generate molecules, small molecules, large molecules, and this is important for enabling our different target strategies, but also it's the foundation of IP that can eventually be the source of technology license or creating companies and so forth. Developing a very strong capabilities in bioinformatics and computational biology, in addition to computational chemistry for molecular design and predictive work. I'll mention this in a moment. Another key capability that's been really a tremendous advantage here at the IBRI is the creation of an iPSC lab to be able to create different types of cell lines from patient origin that give us tremendous power for cellular pharmacology, genetic pharmacologic screening, and to really create some new paradigms or approaches to therapeutic discovery. And we also have, thanks to the work of Jay, and he'll talk a little bit about this later, an extended network of capabilities that we have accessed through pre-arranged arrangements with CROs and other technology providers, so we can easily access and bring that not only for our own work, but pass that through to our collaborators as well. And we hope that will be a key facilitator for really helping companies get off the ground as they think about a forward strategy as an example. And then ultimately, and I think this is what Lori mentioned in her overview of some of the early vision, we really have a collaborative mission for unique partnership, trying to break down some of the challenges that occur in the walls of academia or in industry that are really limiting to getting new types of arrangements together, whether it's being sharing of IP or as different collaborative arrangements, sharing of resources. We're trying to really simplify that and hopefully create a new sandbox that really provides an alternative path forward when new ideas come forward that are looking for a way for enablement. So that's actually been pretty exciting. So this is a bit of the picture we have. And if I just give you a snapshot right now, this has allowed us then to create some really exciting new initiatives through partnership. We're working in type 1 and type 2 diabetes, with the type 1 side focusing on the role of the immune system. The type 1 is an autoimmune disease. We're also looking at the neuroendocrine axis through a number of different arrangements. And not only we have our internal work, but emerging partnerships that are being part of that collaboration. We also have an expanding presence in pediatric rare diseases, and it's largely responsible for it came about through our relationship with Dr. Clapp. We'll talk a little bit about that later. And we're working on neurofibromatosis, osteosarcoma, and Duchenne cardiomyopathy, and this is a close relationship with Riley, and very, very exciting programs. And then we also have a growing effort in Alzheimer's disease. It's probably not well known as it should be, but there's a tremendous program at IU School of Medicine in Alzheimer's disease, preclinical and clinical research. Actually, IU accounts for about 5% of the National Institute of Aging yearly grant budget. So it's a tremendous program. And there are a lot of efforts going on preclinically and in the translational space. And so there's a growing need for the kind of capabilities and resources the IBR have to make that program more robust and even provide access to more type of opportunities. So we've developed a very well. So this begins to define a little bit of the therapeutic breadth that we're engaged in through collaboration. This will change and evolve over time. We want to be open to scientific opportunity and really provide alternatives where, you know, innovative disease biology insights can actually be married with a way to move it forward to potential solutions. So this is just one complex, but we'll talk a little bit more about this later, but just a great example of the work we're doing with Dr. Clapp in the neurofibromatosis area. So Dr. Clapp has a tremendous preclinical and clinical program for this terrible disease. And we've actually brought together a number of the new capabilities we have at the IBRI on the right, together with his team and his program, and really created a very unique bench-to-patient paradigm for studying neurofibromatosis, but also in part of this mechanism, coming up with potential new uses of existing drugs, but also laying the foundation for new therapeutic discovery. And so we have a lot of very exciting work going on here. We'll get into that in a little bit more detail, but just an example of how we're bringing things together to create something new. The other thing that's really a foundation of this, and it's really part of some of our underlying strategy, I mentioned the IPSC lab. So, you know, one of the things that is a major emphasis across the industry, but also about in any, you know, preclinical translational setting is humanized preclinical research. Trying to, you know, have more predictive models that we can study outside of patients that will suggest what will happen in patients. And this is coming in many, many different forms, and it's been facilitated by many types of technology development. But one thing that we're doing here at the IBRI is very important for in vitro cellular pharmacology. It's really working with induced pluripotent stem cells, where we can take patient tissue and convert it into different unique cell lines that have the same genetic background as that patient, and really is a great in vitro model of that disease. And so this is becoming a very, very powerful technology, and we really have a phenomenal facility here to be able to do this across many different tissue types. And, you know, we're currently, you know, initially we started to support our diabetes effort by creating patient-derived iPSC lines for beta cells and islets for studying diabetes, but now we've extended the Schwann cells for neurofibromatosis work, and we're also extending it to glial cells for studying Alzheimer's disease. So this is a very important emerging area. But one thing, though, is not just stopping at that level. We're coupling it to industry quality genetic screening, pharmacologic screening, so we can put those cells to work and really give us insights to disease and potential paths to new therapies. So a very, very exciting capability, but just an example of how we're trying to you know, make ourselves relevant to new and emerging paradigms by really providing key talent and capabilities that can add to edge discovery processes. One thing I'll just mention here, and we can get into this a little bit more, is some of the additional capabilities. So I mentioned about the lab behind the wall. So we've expanded now to make our ability to do drug discovery. And we have a phenomenal lab, and I think it will be open for tours at some point in the future. But this is about a 5,000 square foot facility with a number of hoods and cutting edge technology to be able to do molecular synthesis. And so that is going to add quite a bit to our arsenal of tools. But we also have a very exciting in silico platform. We recognize that computational methods, computational based molecular design and optimization across many aspects of translational science is critical. We're building up a strong footprint there. And also, as I mentioned before, network capabilities. So many of the things that are sort of nuts and bolts of being able to do work, whether it's sample management, access to reagents, storage of materials, access to routine type of services, we're developing a very strong network that is plugged right into the IBRI that we can leverage on any new project that emerges, either for ourselves or through collaboration. So again, another distinguishing feature that will make this truly a very helpful center of partnership. And then related to partnerships, you know, one of the things that we've also done, and it really is important for helping to build the broader community, is to leverage our facility for young startups, the biotechs, academic entrepreneurs, you know, elements of an incubator. We provide our capabilities. So the physical structure, our labs, but also a lot of the capabilities, technologies that I mentioned, and provide those in unique business models to really help some of these young companies discharge risk and really get to that next level of value creation. So we'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment, but we have about 13 companies here now that are leveraging the IBRI infrastructure for just that purpose. And that's another thing that really will help us in really helping those companies, but also realizing some of these long-term economic development goals if they're successful and grow and be able to attract more talent, but also expand their business base. So it's a very interesting model that we have embedded in our, you know, in our activities is focused on really advancing disease science, but it really is meant to be a part of helping the community. So I'm going to end it there, and we'll have time for some questions. But right now, I'd like to invite up two individuals, Dr. Clapp, who's the chair of the Department of Pediatrics at IU School of Medicine and Riley Hospital, and has been a tremendous partner with us on some of our pediatric work, and Jay McGill, who's our Chief Operating Officer and Executive VP of Administration, and we'll talk a little bit more about happening at the IBRI and give some additional perspective. Yeah, so I'm going to start. I'm just going to throw each a question. So Wayne, I'm going to start with you, and welcome, and thank you for spending the time with us this morning. But, you know, it is you know, our work has sort of unfolded. You know, it started from, you know, simple discussion, and then eventually has now you know, morphed into an expanded, you know, collaboration, a new clinical paradigm we're pursuing. And, you know, maybe give your perspective of how you've seen the IBRI, the partnership, you know, come together, some of the strengths and maybe areas that we can continue to evolve with, you know, as the future, you know, unfolds here. But how this has maybe affected your view of what, you know, direction you can take your research program and those of your colleagues.
Yeah, thank you, Alan, and I appreciate the opportunity to be here. Just for a 1 minute background. So our laboratory really focuses on 2 genetic diseases with a predisposition to cancer. One affects about 100,000 individuals in the United States, and the other 25,000. 10 years ago, there were no therapies at all for either condition. As Alan mentioned, we're very active in developing accurate preclinical models of these 2 tumor suppressors, and with our colleagues that we've worked together with here and across the country, but heavily at Riley. There's now 3 drugs that we're seeing a biological impact in NF1. One's FDA approved. In NF2, there's a 4th drug that's in clinical trials now and seems to be having a biological impact. At least a number of patients, and a friend of mine told me that the number of surgeries is being used outside of clinical trials too, since it's an FDA. And she said the number of surgeries that they had at Johns Hopkins went from 25 to 5 last year, because the first drug's having at least some level of impact. However, so we're you know, an academic lab with some capabilities, and however, we're very good at animal models. We're good at clinical trials. We can identify drug targets and have good capacity at that, using novel methodologies, using mass spec and NIBS. But the ability to build on that, to do high throughput screening with industry rigor, as Alan mentioned, that's something that's really important to me, because I know our work from us, it gets the green light from us. We're moving to clinical trials. So I want to be sure before I expose children to a drug. And I appreciate the industry rigor and the ability to do combinations. We didn't have capacity to do iPSCs. Alan's group is developing those for us. And while we've identified really novel opportunities in the tumors that we have, where we're looking at the post-translational modification of all the kinases in the tumor quantitatively, so we really can't see what's driving the growth of the tumor. There's real opportunities to develop new chemical matter, so that would be transformative for these patients. And we know that some of these would be transformative because we've done the genetic proofs of concept in the mice. And we intercross the mice and we knock out this gene, this kinase, and the tumors don't develop. So we have good rationale to do it. We don't have that expertise, but neither does Mary Matter and the IBRI faculty and Alan's group do. And it really provides us a way to bring new therapies, new chemical matter for these patients that currently have a slow, painful death, frankly. So it's a real opportunity there. One thing about genetic diseases too, as we're starting to all learn more about them, the tumor suppressors that are mutated in these patients are being now recognized to be somatic mutations in other tumors, including 20% of all glioblastomas, 80% of meningiomas and schwannomas that are collectively 3 to 4% of all CNS tumors. So there's additional broader value outside of the organ conditions. But we couldn't begin to do this without this sort of collaboration. And I've always had to go to the West Coast or go to the East Coast for this. And it's now awesome, frankly, to walk across the street and to talk with people and to be able to develop this in
Thank you, Mr. Excellent. There's a more questions. Jay, one of the things I wanted to maybe ask you to elaborate on. So, we have a part of our mission to really help grow the biomedical community, and that comes in many different forms. It's talent development, but also to help young companies get off to a good start. And I wanted to, maybe you can comment on a couple of those initiatives we have ongoing and what that looks like for young entrepreneurs, but even people, young students who are thinking about careers in life science.
Yeah, sure. As Alan mentioned before, we opened our labs up to startup companies to really get access to a laboratory space, fully equipped and fully accessible to a company at quite frankly prices that are very, very affordable and well below what you would see on either of the coast. We have, as already been mentioned, created the drug discovery lab, which is really a state-of-the-art chemistry facility that's quite frankly not like no other that I have ever seen in the incubator space. It's very different than an academic lab, and it's very different than an incubator lab that you might find someplace else, where you walk in, you have a bench and a hood, but it's not equipped. You got to bring your own equipment. So here, bring your chemicals, and you have everything accessible to you. As it also been previously mentioned, we tried to set up all of our relationships for the types of activities and capabilities that we would need, whether it's molecular design and Schrodinger type software, or sample management, or custom synthesis, or whatever. We've made those arrangements so that we can offer those as a pass-through to any of our members that join, IBRI. They come and take our space. We also, in partnership with Crossroads and 16 Tech, a number of years ago, established a mentoring program for the young or new entrepreneurs. And that mentoring program is modeled after the MIT Venture Mentoring Services program. You bring together a group of experienced people, whether their experiences in marketing, or in finance, or in legal, or in drug discovery, and you partner them with a young entrepreneur, and you help them through the many challenges. We've also just started a new intern program, where we're really wanting to bring in students and give them experiential training in what I would call industrial setting, where you're placed on a team with a cross-discipline group of folks that are working to on a project together. And so it's not a basic research project. It's really a translational research project, like the ones you would see if you graduated and went into an industrial setting. So I think it's a more relevant experiential training program to those that are graduating and going into jobs, hopefully in Indiana, than internships in an academic setting. So.
Good. Maybe I'll ask Wade a question. Wade, as a chair of large department, a very prestigious department, you're always involved in on the hunt for new faculty, bringing new talent into Indianapolis to School of Medicine, and community. How does that play into sort of your strategy and the interest of some of the next generation of faculty researchers, and how can we even broadly maximize that attraction?
Yeah, thanks for asking that. So
use it like maybe.
Thank you. So we do have a very active discovery component of our Department of Pediatrics. We're currently ranked number 6 in the country of all departments of pediatrics in terms of NIH funding. It's a large faculty. It is a large faculty. We have a large statewide clinical impact. So, the epidemiology of children is such that, about 7% of kids really need a comprehensive children's hospital like Riley. But we're at Riley Children's Hospital is now a very large robust children's hospital that reaches out into 19 communities currently. And we're trying to serve children all across the state. So we have a big clinical patient population that we can serve. There's a lot of things that we have that are great advantages to Indianapolis and in central Indiana. Our cost of living is great. We do have a great culture. A lot of the senior faculty that I'm recruiting, they're very interested in the discovery space in many of the same ways that I am. They've made drug targets. Many of them are in clinical trials. We actually have, I counted the other day, there's 5 investigators that are actually making new chemical matter in the Department of Pediatrics. We're becoming one of those places that people begin to look to this is, if you want to do this sort of stuff, Indiana is a place to do it. A real gap is previously was there wasn't a place like the IBRI. And I'm very appreciative that Alan and the other Jay and the other faculty meet with our faculty when they come and begin to discover these sorts of opportunities, because it really, for diseases that pediatricians take care of, we are a specialty of genetic diseases, of orphan conditions that by definition have less than 100,000 patients. So discovery is really on the backs of physicians that are familiar with these orphan conditions as departments of pediatrics. And by having the IBRI together with Riley Hospitals, it's an awesome hospital. It's a very awesome hospital. We should all be proud of. To have that in this structure where, they're building a walking path that I'll be a 3-minute walk from my office to here. It's just, you can't get that in Boston or Hopkins or in San Francisco. This is becoming a real strategic advantage for us to grow biomedical sciences in Indiana. And trainees, great trainees, want to come to this too.
Thanks, Wade. Thanks, appreciate that. Jay, another question for you. Our work with Wade and his team's example of, in our backyard, right? So we need to maximize those opportunities and make sure we're not overlooking great opportunities for tremendous programs that can make a difference. But, one of our long-term goals is to look beyond, look beyond our backyard throughout Indiana, but also, globally. Recently added Sharon Simonis, who's our VP of Scientific Business Development, and maybe you can comment a little bit about sort of that strategy to kind of take our message broader and how we're going to look at, creating more of an expanded network and community of collaborators that could, partner with us and similar, but maybe just in different ways than we've already established with Wade and his team.
Yeah, I think, one thing everybody realized in the post-COVID world is, you can accomplish things in a very different manner than, was done in a previous, world. So, used to, everybody thought that, if you were going to do a startup, you had to go to Boston or, San Francisco in order to be, proximal to the money and or the resources to, to execute. That's not true any longer. The reality is even big pharma is working in a distributed model, and many companies are working in a distributed model. We do several things. One, we want to attract companies to come and work with the IBRI because of the enabling capabilities that we have. And we brought Sharon on board to, really help expand our network and our reach outside of Indiana, because we've been so focused inside of Indiana and because of proximity. And quite honestly, in a short amount of time, we've brought in a number of different groups that have shown some interest, and we're working through some work plans with them. to do some sponsored research activities, leveraging the enabling capabilities that we built in the last 2 or 3 years post-COVID. We've also had some companies that want to locate here in our labs because they can't afford to do that elsewhere. We have, I think, 3 companies of the 13 that Alan mentioned that had actually come from out of state. And they were attracted to Indiana by different things, but when they, when they got introduced to the labs at the IBRI, there was no labs like that from where they came from. And this, we're talking about like New Jersey and Virginia. So we have to, be able to reach outside the state of Indiana. And I think, doing that in 2 different ways. We're looking at, where can we create partnerships that utilize the IBRI, and how can we attract, companies to come and actually do their operations here. They don't have to have their CEO here. They don't have to have their money here. They don't have to have their chief medical officer here. But this is a great place to do the execution of activities.
You might want to just comment on our other unique arrangement with INSERM. It's going to start up pretty soon.
Yeah, so and actually this started before COVID. We recognized, a number of years ago that European investigators have a unique opportunity to establish labs, outside of their home institution. This happens in Asia all the time. You see, somebody has a separate lab in China or Japan or Singapore or whatever. And we thought that the IBRI would be a great, place to do that. And we had an investigator that was here for a number of years through the COVID, established a satellite lab, and we began reaching out to others in the diabetes space. And in April, Roberto Malone and his associate, Sylvain Yu, are joining the IBRI, and they will be establishing a satellite lab from their lab in Paris at INSERM. So INSERM is basically the equivalent of the NIH in France. And so they're going to be spending about 20% of their time. They're going to hire a staff in their lab to be able to collaborate locally, with their technology and the groups that they're bringing from their group in Paris.
Great. Well, with that, let me go ahead and open up for some questions. Any comments you might have or things you want to learn more about. Happy to pass around the mic.
Thank you. I just want to point out respectfully that the whole idea and the model that you've set up works, but in reality, phase 1 SBIR awards do not allow funding for facilities and rent. And while you've got these well-resourced laboratories, that falls out of Elevate Ventures matching funds to phase 1 SBIR grants. Still can't afford access to these facilities. There's just not, startup companies. Now, what you've done is really great, but where that initial innovation, there's a significant gap in the ability of initial startups who've had the novelty and the impact of their potential their research on patient needs. Phase 1 grant recipients, award recipients can't afford to be here.
Yeah, so that is excellent feedback, and I think that gives a challenge to not only the IBRI but Elevate Ventures, the other seed funding mechanisms, the the universities, whether it's IU, Purdue, everybody to, to help this community solve that problem. So I'll take that on as an assignment.
Yeah, I can just shout it out.
I got it. Wait.
I have a loud voice. Yeah, I was wondering about, I know that you guys, have to choose what to do and not spread yourselves too thin. The question I had is about sample collection, right? Access to sample collection, compound libraries, and so on. And that's not one of the things that you do here. Do we need that? Do we already have that? Can you already tap into sample collections in a number of other places? Is that part of the ecosystem in good shape, or do we have work to do there?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think, the days of, having a huge, million sample collection and doing high throughput screening as your primary approach to drug discovery are well beyond us. I think there are so many different approaches depending on the target, the target class or the target that you're working on. You could take a structural biology approach. You could take a computational approach. You could take a screening approach or a targeted screening approach. What the IBRI has tried to do is enable approaches, and so let's bring the right tool to the job, if you will. Partnerships that give us access to large libraries. But you're typically working through a smaller cassette, a targeted library. In fact, now we have created a fairly small library of basically oncology drugs that are in the on the market or in clinical trials, and we've been doing that to build up our inventory. We could do combination screening, for some of the programs and his team.
Good. I was asking really because a lot of times in working with students or small companies, they have an idea, and where do we go to get the compounds to test things? And there's not really a one-stop shop in the region that I know of, but maybe other questions coming.
Yeah, so we've established a couple of partnerships. You can purchase for pretty low, and we also have established sample management partnerships that can do the plating and things like that for samples. It's that type of infrastructure that you really want to avoid building yourself, because it's so readily available externally.
Yeah, I think in those situations, the best thing is to initially connect with, individuals like Mary Bader or myself or Jay, and, because you can spend a tremendous amount of money and get nothing. And it really, you have to think about what you're trying to achieve. And sometimes there's pretty economical solutions to get started. So,
otherwise, we build a $10 million thing that gets used 1% of the time.
yeah, exactly. And then it's decayed.
And 2 years from now, top 4.
Hi, I'm Karen Worster, CEO of Adipo, and as Jay and Alan know, I'm a big fan of what IBRI provides for the biotech community here and startup companies. Bringing Sharon on has been terrific as well. But when I look at your mission and your vision, it's very clear that it's industry and academia. And industry we often think of as big pharma. And when I look at where you're going around life science start, because I think that's one of the things I've learned coming from big pharma, that the life science startups play a really key role in that transition from academia to big pharma, and I see the activities going on. I feel the support. I don't see it in the mission and vision.
Yeah, so that's really great feedback. I think when we think about industry, we think about everything other than academia. But I think being a little bit more explicit on that would really help create resolution to the target audiences. And yeah, but definitely, I mean, that space we want to really be, very involved with and really help and even participate in it, the outgrowth of some of our work. So absolutely.
Yeah, and what I'll echo here is I think if you look, 10 years ago, the IBRI was formed around the bigger companies, but the world has changed a lot in the last 10 years. It's not the bigger companies that really enable us. And if you look at what we've been doing, in the last, 3 years, it's really focused on enabling, things coming from academia and things that are in small companies to be done at the quality standards that would be attractive to the bigger companies.
You're right. So the intersection point with industry, traditional, is much, further afield and where a lot of our nuts and bolts activity happens.
Just got a follow-up question about Jay. You were talking about your drug discovery lab. It's also a deep voice. And thank you guys for taking questions. It's really nice. You talked about the infrastructure that you currently have, and I, about a few months ago. How about, let's say, the future and the translation capabilities that you have in addition to the drug discovery lab, about actually manning those types of capabilities? You talked about the lab space, but how about the expertise and the people that could be utilized by new individuals and startups that come through here? It's not just about drug discovery, it's kind of a question about all of your translational capabilities.
Yeah, so I think if you pay a lot of attention to the new hires at the IBRI, I'll let Alan answer this. We're really bringing in a lot of sort of young staff that are in very deep in one discipline that's part of a translational paradigm. Excuse me. I think they're more of a professional staff than they are an academic faculty. Okay, so the IBRI is a really good mix of some investigators that look a lot like they're in academia, and some professional staff that look a lot like they would in industry. And we're bringing that young staff together to really continue to educate and train people. And we're bringing people in all of these disciplines, whether it's medicinal chemistry or protein or structural biology or cellular pharmacology. Really it's a startup community, with the capabilities that you go cut across. And we're going to continue to build. I think, we'll have 18 hires this year. I think is our plan. And they're all going to be in sort of that translational staffing.
And access through like a collaboration. I mean, when it comes to actually being able to fund that type of work, quite easily accessible across the capabilities.
Absolutely. And as Alan pointed out, I think, one of the great things about the IBRI from its inception is it's built to, be flexible about the collaboration models. And so we have a variety of models by which we can work with people.
I think the weight is a perfect example of that. So if you look at, we actually have a number of grants that we're writing together and ongoing work, and it's really a cross-functional IBRI team. It's Mary Bader in medicinal chemistry expertise. We have iPSC expertise, cellular pharmacology, data scientists. I mean, so it really completes pie, if you will, for, doing a high quality science and some of the ambitious goals we have for these. And we'll grow as, our programs, grow, add staff to meet the capacity. The other thing too that we've been working on, and I think you can't hire all the expertise in the world, but we do have, for all the people that are joining, a pretty rich Rolodex. And so there's a lot of individuals that are interested in, doing some consulting or, doing some have to hire as full-time employees. And so we're looking at mechanisms. If someone comes with us with a problem that goes beyond our expertise, what we'd eventually like to do is to be able to put together a team, maybe, through some unique employment arrangement or consulting arrangement to be able to bring, expertise to the table, and help facilitate that. Especially if we get into some of these activities that are an extension of where our core work is, maybe if it's into early development, for example.
Any other questions?
Hi, I'm Josh, CEO of Xylogenics. I've kind of been a tenant of the IBRI since I'm probably the oldest tenant, all the way from the IUETC till now. The one hole I see is kind of his sentiment is, where is the infrastructure for a young startup company, someone not from, the IU School of Medicine doing translational research work? Where's that environment being built? Because that's the environment I needed when I started. It wasn't here. And I haven't seen it built since I've been here. Garage type mentality where we can bring in young people, young ambitious people, because it's a different breed to be in the, especially the startup.
You don't have to be young.
Yeah, sorry about that. I'm not age discriminating, but where is that environment? Been in the U for 15 years now. I haven't seen it. You see it everywhere else. You see it in the West Coast, the East Coast to some extent, but I haven't seen it here. So I just wanted to make that sentiment.
I'll comment on that. Yeah, that's not lost on us. When Alan came on board and really, sort of refocused our strategy, from the outset, we said that is the type of thing that, we've got to build in this community. Without giving away too much, we do have thoughts and plans for trying to do that, but we've got to build our capabilities in our network first. So maybe in a couple of years we can, have a FrameWORX discussion around the capabilities that we've built that really enable that, that garage-like mentality.
So, but a lot of it comes down to, making the space available, but also dollars, right? I mean, you need some of those dollars, and be great is if we have some type of innovation fund that can be created for some different contributing partners for just this purpose of economic development, and they could come together, and we may have a process by which, we could allow our space to be accessible if somebody else money, some fun to get some initial ideas off the ground. And like Jay said, we have some initial thoughts and some discussion going on around that. But that to me would be the true catalyst that's needed to get to that point where, to close that gap that you discussed.
I mean, we literally started in a garage, and I'd way rather be behind that wall.
Well, there's other things, the sort of the back office, right? HR, finance, those sort of things. So, if you're a young startup yourself.
And exactly. And I think it's part of our goal for financial sustainability to embed it in that, is to be able to do things independently like that, are part of our model. And so that to me would be another part of our long-term goal. But, hopefully within a couple of years, we'll do things. And again, I think that's where, again, you can't help everybody, right? I mean, it's a big world and there's a lot of opportunities, but through, and right matching of capabilities with need, the more the more we can, you know, have a good quality starts, the more potential value is there and the more potential success. So that's definitely what we're trying to, you know, help facilitate.
Hi, I'm Kristen Eilenberg and I'm from Elevate Ventures. Elevate Ventures has been mentioned a few times this morning, so I thought I better introduce myself. But I want to say that this challenge is on our radar too. So IBRI is not the only one that's trying to figure out how to bring the community together to harness the energy. There's phenomenal people in this room, and if I have never met you, please introduce yourself. But we are trying to figure out how to bring together the minds, the energy, and the funding to be able to make all these things happen. So they're not the only ones that are trying to figure this out right now, but if you do have specific ideas about how to specifically serve the life sciences community, that's to go. My focus is the life sciences umbrella. I focus in on therapeutics, diagnostics, med device, and digital health. So end-to-end, and then I also have to reach into ag, because I guess I'm the only one that has a biology background. So, you know what I mean? Like, so I get to for real. So the other thing that I wanted to let you know is there's a few things that are going to happen here in Indiana specific to the entrepreneurial ecosystem. Number one, Elevate and many of the different organizations are getting ready to do an event at the end of August called Rally. We're just in the process of starting to do our marketing and all those kinds of things, but international investors, a lot of really interesting kinds of things going to take over the convention center. Not just us at Elevate, all of the different organizations like Connexus and BioCrossroads. Everybody's at the table kind of thing, trying to figure out how we can create an energy around entrepreneurship and innovation. So that's going to be happening at the end of August. Definitely block your calendars for that. We'll start doing some activities and different kinds of things to just get the energy flowing. The other thing is that my background is science. And I know that historically in this ecosystem, we like pitch competitions, right? And so we'll hand you a mic and we'll be like, tell us all about your company in 3 minutes or less. And then we'll do a slow clap to get you off the stage kind of thing. That doesn't work for us that want to talk about science. Like, right? Like science is awesome. And I gotta say it's sexy, right? Like when somebody's telling me what they're doing from an innovation standpoint, I'm like, game on, let's figure this out. So the other thing that I'm trying to bring to this ecosystem is more of opportunities to showcase. Is it a poster session where we all get together and we got posters and we can walk around and learn from each other? But it's also those serendipitous connections that happen when we have those kinds of events. So I haven't figured it all out yet. I'm still relatively new in my position, but I am trying to figure out how to create that energy and the opportunity for us with each other, because that's also about how the ecosystems on the West Coast and the East Coast are able to mobilize and do things, is that they share resources. So trying to figure it out. If you guys don't know me, come over, please introduce yourself and let's have a conversation.
Any other questions?
I was quite intrigued by your geographical focus. And I know that it's probably in its infancy. I'm sure Sharon will bring great things to that. When you think about, I guess, in its early stage of strategy towards kind of cross partnerships and making this place much better for, I guess, local community, how does that look? Is there a strategy about what you want to bring in, who you want to bring in that would enable that cross call? And I appreciate if it's early.
Yeah, so I'll give so we have some key positions that we're recruiting for, and I find the right individual, maybe comes from one of the coast that wants to make a change and bring some of their relationships or network. That's a way to kind of do it in a very direct way. But I think in part of Sharon's work, what we're really trying to do is it doesn't matter whether you're in the middle of Indiana or on the east or west coast. Believe me, I think we're all competing, for the same grant. We're competing for the same science, for the same attention of investigators. And I would put up work that goes on in Indiana up against anything that's done all over the globe. I think it's just, finding a way to connect with the right people that have common interests and that really initiative and really join forces. And I think that we just have to get out a little bit more and put ourselves in the middle of that network, and actually make those connections. And, working with Wade, for example, I mean, we've just through Wade's network, for example, with the Children's Tumor Foundation, we had the CEO of the CTF visit us last week, and all of a sudden there's all these great ideas of the world community working in this space. That's me as an element of it. So I think that's the amplification approach. We don't have to physically change our location. I think it's just creating the right connections and letting, the science opportunity drive relationships to bridge geography.
So congratulations on the first 10 years of the IBRI. It's very, very impressive. What are some of your thoughts? What's 2033 going to look like? I guess if each of you could weigh in quickly on that.
Yeah, so I'll just do very things. So Derek, my colleague Derek, always said, and think of IBRI as the broad of the Midwest. So that would be our ambition. Not exactly like the broad, but something with equal stature and impact and recognition.
Any other questions?
Been a lot of focus on biopharma, biomed, but where are you? It seems like there's a lot of companies in here that are focused on that part of research.
Yeah, so that is a little bit more afield from the capabilities that we have. Although it's kind of interesting, Mary Nader, our head of molecular innovation, there are companies that are reaching out that are in that space that are actually interested in some of the capabilities we have to enable some of their research. So it's, we're not going to be in the middle of that directly, but I think, the capabilities we have play across a number of different types of platforms. But, that isn't, it's a little bit more afield, but it doesn't preclude us from getting involved. And even with, with animal sciences or plant sciences, I mean, I think, chemistry, biology, there's a lot of commonalities but we won't have a direct internal emphasis as part of our focus.
I mean, life sciences has a pretty broad definition, and I think one of the things that we've learned over the last 10 years is we can't be all things to everybody in life sciences. And I think we really honed in on the translational aspects in human health. Now there are some overlap in ag and plant sciences, but there's a need for an IBRI in other like sectors of life sciences, and I know Chris and others are really working hard to try to enable sort of a manufacturing life sciences manufacturing sort of I don't know if institute's the right word, but collaboration, public-private partnership, and that synthetic biology may fall better into that area than into what we're trying to achieve.
Since you pulled me out of the shadows, Alan, with the broad of the Midwest comment, I can't remember who said that to me. It was many years ago, actually, even IBRI. But I mean, that's always been kind of a vision that I think has made it clear, possible here. And so just for a little background on me too, I mean, I've been, doing venture creation in life sciences for 20 years or so, but I haven't been able to actually launch companies here. Not that people can't, lots of people are doing that and they're successful, but it just wasn't kind of like the right setup for me. So I've launched companies in Chicago area, Evanston. I've commuted out to San Francisco and South San Francisco for years, San Diego companies. I launched a company in Shanghai, China too, New York, Boston, but never really. And then even I did start kind of a headquarters here for a public company that we had here called Assembly, and that's been my merge there. It's now though, and I've lived here the whole time. I've lived in Indiana the whole time, and even a few years ago, I joined the BioCrossroads board to try and like start to get some connectivity back here and be a little bit more involved. And a lot of it, I said this to David Johnson a long time ago too, and joining that is, you know, I didn't really enjoy interacting a lot with the local life science efforts, planning, and that we weren't Boston or San Francisco. And for me, it was like, you know, having been in those places and kind of, you know, advanced companies in those places, I'm not sure that they're actually all, a lot of people kind of think that they are. But at the same time, we're not them, you know, we're not, this environment is not that situation. And it probably never will be, because guess what, there's already a Cambridge, there's already a South San Francisco, they're already doing different things too. So they're always going to evolve. We need to be kind of us. And what I was encouraged by though, after kind of having to commute for 15 years and spending a little bit of time with Crossroads, is that it was the soil was much more fertile when I started to come back in here, and I'm like, oh wow, you guys have actually been doing some stuff, and there are some, you know, some areas where maybe, you know, you can have a really, you know, for something to grow, it's not because it's not a good seed that it doesn't grow. You can have a really good seed that doesn't grow in the desert, right? Well, you need to have soil that can really foster that, a really good seed, and allow that to grow. And I really felt like the soil was really starting to be a little bit more fertile than the desert that I felt like I left, you know, 20 years before that. And so I'm really encouraged by that. So I want to encourage that. I also want to say we're working on that, and I think it is an energy thing. This is a great, or gravity, you know, energy and gravity. I think there's a proximity value to those areas, Cambridge, San Diego, key areas of San Diego, South San Francisco, Mission Bay, and in San Francisco city. That it is a proximity thing, and it's an effort. You know, and yes, there's a little bit better weather in San Francisco. Some people are outside a little bit more. Cambridge, it's just a proximity thing, and multiple institutions and kind of quantity. But for us, this right here kind of gives us an opportunity to build some of that gravity, that pull. But it requires people to come here and do this. So this is really encouraging me to just see people start to come in, spend some time here. The types of people, you know, having Inserm here, having Wade really spend more time here, the Alzheimer's effort, and you know what he didn't really mention. I mean, these are key kind of out where if we're 6%, you know, top 6 NIH funded pediatric program, that's major. That doesn't exist in those areas either, too, necessarily. Alzheimer's, top 3 funded in National Institutes of Aging, you know, consortium in the United States. Diabetes, I mean, who has more stuff here than we do for that? So these are, you know, kind of emphasizing the positives, and then yeah, because we can't boil the ocean, we can't really do everything, but focusing on that first, having some successes, is going to be really important. Getting some more gravity. Third thing I was just going to say too, and what Kristen was talking about, it is kind of an effort in getting these addressing gaps, and one of the gaps is it's leadership, but you can't make leadership. You know, you have to kind of train leadership. You have to bring people along. So we've started a group. I don't know if Michelle can do, or Kristen Sherman, or anybody, but we're going to start a business and finance type of community. Okay, and we're training a few young finance people in my companies that we're launching at Lucent BioVentures, that had never been in life sciences, that want to be directors of finance. They want to be chief financial officers. They want to be controllers. So we have key kind of students in that, or in young professionals that we're working with those, that community. But I want to bring along more people. I want anybody who's business and finance, you know, interested in life sciences. We're going to start having some meetings that are not just going to be meetings. They're going to be, you know, basically sharing, you know, to my companies, to our other friends' companies that are getting launched in ways of leverage our relative, progress or whatever, if that can help companies build their leadership in business and life sciences too. So, and I think that's what it takes is for each one of us in this room right here too, like what Kristen's doing and elevate. You have to kind of make an effort. What are some of our gaps? Well, how can we help to, kind of address them? Or if you know someone of us that can help and we're not doing it, I think, reaching out and offering the idea or offering the suggestion, I think that's how we bridge these, a lot of these gaps. So I took a lot of air for the Bro to the Midwest, pull out of the shadows, but I do use that all the time, right? Because I think this has the potential.
Okay.
Laura, did you want to continue anything or?
Sure, I just like to thank all of our speakers and to you guys for being here this morning. We look forward to you spending time at IBRI, HQO around this community. It's really growing. I don't think I'm giving too much away, but the groundbreaking for the bridge is coming up here before too long. So Dr. Clapp, you really will be able to make that walk here before too long. You don't have to swim across the creek. So anyway, again, thanks so much. Keep your eyes peeled on newsletters from BioCrossroads for forthcoming events and information, and have a good day.
Thank you.